Good morning and welcome to the 16th in our Shift, Sustain, Succeed series. This is week 9 of helping you find answers to the most pressing questions our businesses have in navigating the COVID-19 situation. While businesses have been faced with a variety of challenges over the last 3 months, there have been many organizations working tirelessly to find solutions, or at least to help businesses keep operating, or to be certain that they return to operation. Today's guest is Susan Hileman, Strategic Business Advisor with the Northwest Industrial Resource Center. So Susan will talk about some of the resources available to our businesses, small and large, manufacturing and otherwise, and some of the partners that she is working with. Everything continues to evolve now more than ever. So remember that everything we share today is based on the information that we have available right now. We'll do our best to bring you current information as things change. If you have additional questions, please submit them to our Zoom chat, and we'll do our best. To answer. Didn't turn my cell phone off. Sorry about that. Put questions in the chat. We'll do our best to include them or follow up. So with that, let's get started. Susan, you have been working with manufacturers for some time, for many years, in fact, and you've seen a number of obstacles related to the economy, hiring, and business operations over those years. How are the challenges that we're facing right now with this pandemic different than what you've dealt with in the past?
Well, first I want to say good morning and thank you for asking me to come today. It's a pleasure to be here, and I want to say hi to everyone on the call. Some of you I know, some of you I don't know, so good morning. The gist of it is a pandemic is fundamentally different from other types of normal business threats that you see. The normal obstacles you have with inability to find qualified employees, the business is down, sales are sluggish, we were not able to retain our cost, like those normal types of business issues. During a pandemic, it's much different. The threats to the business are much different. So normal threats that we would see, like a fire, or is there something in place that would affect your infrastructure? Right now, cybersecurity is a huge issue because of technology. It's very difficult to live and operate a business without technology. So those kinds of threats are sort of exacerbated. And the thing is a pandemic by definition is not just local. It's a threat across the globe. And because so many of our businesses are tier 1 or tier 2 or tier 3 suppliers to other industries outside of our local area, outside of our region, outside of our state, sometimes outside of our country, there's all these other issues that are coming into play, particularly with supply chain issues. That's the one that we are hearing most. But the biggest focus for business really has to shift from, really focusing on business operations and really looking how can we protect our employees? How are we going to be able to sustain the business during, the next crisis or a second wave? So that the challenges that they're facing are really quite different than normal business operations.
Yeah, well, don't you know it? And I think specifically those things around employees and being sensitive to everything they need. Well, many manufacturers were actually deemed essential and assumed that they would really not have to make significant changes. I know you and I both had conversations in the first few weeks. It looked like it was going to be good for them. They were, they maybe even had back orders. They had plenty of time. Where small businesses closed almost immediately. When we heard that there was this threat, I think they closed thinking, well, this will only be for a few weeks. Now this has impacted everyone. I don't think there's anyone untouched. What do you see as the similarities and differences between what small businesses and larger employers had to work with?
Well, first, I'd like to say that I always tell businesses and all the trainings that I do, business is really way more similar than we are different. We all have employee issues. We all have process issues. We all have business operation requirements. So from that aspect, we're very, very similar. And you're right, every business has been affected. Whether you're a business that works with the public or whether you're a business that, just works from your home or within a, four walls where you don't interact with any public, every business, you're right, has been affected some way. The similarities are everyone's concerned about health. Everyone's concerned about how they're going to protect their employees, protect their coworkers. They're concerned about how this pandemic is going to affect the economy, the local economy. How is it going to affect my business operations? Are my sales going to go down? Will I be able to recover those? Those are similar issues. How am I going to conduct business? How am I going to be able to provide social distancing, particularly if my business operation doesn't allow that space-wise? Or is there going to be enough personal protective equipment? The PPE for a while was a huge issue because no one could find hand sanitizer and there weren't enough masks. And I think we've sort of passed that particular hurdle, at least for this first wave. But what happens when we have that second wave, come in the fall? And that's really, part of the similarities, especially in the instruction we're giving to every employer so far. I have not met with one, unfortunately, who has an emergency disaster contingency plan in place, specifically that includes a piece of COVID. Now, before this, who would have done that? None of us would have imagined that really would be necessary, but obviously it is. And because we're in the throes of it right now, it's even more important that that's something that really some thoughtful consideration is given to, because we're here now and it's not going away anytime soon. So how am I going to communicate? There's another similarity. How am I going to communicate not only to my employees, but to my customers, my bankers, my suppliers? If my business is down and it's affecting how I'm able to pay, for example, my suppliers, at what point do I reach out to them? At what point do I reach out to my bank? And I hope if there's any business on the line right now that you have already done that. And if you haven't, I would encourage you, to do that. We all have people issues. We all have families that we work with. And a lot of businesses pride themselves on the fact that their business itself is a community. It's like a family. And so we watch out for each other. We take care of each other. And that's similar regardless of the size of the operation. Even for very large operations, there's generally groups, core groups of people within a department, a division, even like a section on the plant floor, or it really becomes like family. So those are similarities. The differences are a little more subtle. Obviously, larger organizations have more resources at their fingertips. So while they might not have to have a person out there scouting for, how do I handle this issue? How am I going to address this, PPE or social distancing on my floor? Like, instead of having to do it yourself, you might have resources available for other people to do that for you. Larger companies also have to worry about larger issues. For example, in a plant, and particularly because I work for manufacturing, from that standpoint of it, I'm in and out of a lot of plants all day long that have huge pieces of machinery. Obviously, that's nothing you can move. So you have to figure out, how am I going to be able to accommodate our scheduling around that? How about like putting a large percentage of my workforce out on telecommuting? Their homes aren't networked for high-speed internet. The cybersecurity isn't there. How am I going to handle that? I know, again, that's another one of those bridges we've crossed a little bit, but certainly still the differences between large and small. Sales is certainly another one too. We're all concerned about sales, but for a larger business, which really typically would rely on sales people going out and actually meeting with companies. A lot of companies I work with aren't allowing vendors on their shop floor right now. And so if you're the company, how do I deal with that? And in the same aspect, supply chain issues, because whole subsectors have been affected. So if I'm in automotive, for example, the big three are shut down. So certainly, no matter where I'm at in that structure, my business is going to be affected. So
well,
that's really,
we're gonna be talking about supply chain next week, so that's a perfect lead in. But I think let's talk about the NWIRC, the organization you work for, and how you and your partners are working to fill some of those areas where those differences are even more and more apparent now that a lot of the larger businesses do have those resources. They have an HR person, they have the right experts kind of on hand, but some don't.
right.
And most small businesses probably are not equipped. So it's organizations like yours and mine that are looking to figure out how can we help them. So let's take some time, and I'd love for you to tell us about the COVID-19 recovery program that you're working on, how that works, and again, who your partners are.
So the intent of the COVID recovery program that was developed is really to help our smaller businesses. It's not because we're not concerned about the larger business, but specifically what I just said a minute ago, they typically have more resources. And it's our smaller businesses that are our job creators, especially in rural communities. 64%, I think it's 64% of all jobs are created by small business. So this program was really developed initially as a way to provide information to our other partners about what each one of us does. We work what we call in the system. It's a system of economic and workforce development providers, and we know each other, but even that, those people change on a regular basis. So as new people come in, they might not be as familiar with the services that are out there. So initially this program started as a way to fill everybody in, our partners in, on how can I tell if I'm out meeting with a business who I should send them to as a referral, who can help them. So that was how it started. And then NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which is our funding agency, came out with some grant funding. And so we took that kind of outline and just expanded on it and said, you know what, let's just make this into a program where it's really targeting all business. So it is Northwest IRC, Industrial Resource Center, which specifically works with manufacturers, is partnering with Department of Labor and Industry, has a rapid response division. It's when companies are facing massive layoffs or have closed their doors. It's the people that come in and give them advice on how do I file for unemployment? What should I do? What do I need to be aware of? And then the Steel Valley Authority, which is focused on layoff aversion for businesses. And then lastly, the Small Business Development Centers, they're our fourth partner. So Rapid Response works with all companies. The IRC works with only manufacturers. The Steel Valley Authority works with primarily manufacturers, and the Small Business Development Centers works with manufacturers, but for the purposes of this program, we asked them if they'd be willing to work with just non-manufacturers, so other businesses out there. Because look at our community. If you look around, there's businesses up and down the street that aren't manufacturing that have been affected. So who's going to help them? If we're only focused in this area, who's going to be there? So we developed this all-encompassing program, and it is really to answer three questions. The first question is, what does the business need to reopen? The second question is, where does the business need to regain its strength and stabilize? And the third question is, how can the business then prepare to grow? And so each one of us sort of comes into that at a different level. So where rapid response might be a more immediate impact, the business is closing, we need to do something right now, where Steel Valley Authority might come in and say, well, the business is in danger of closing or in danger of layoffs. So, this is where they would fit. And the IRC typically comes in, let's see how we can prevent that by looking at process or looking at operations, looking at financials, and figuring out, is there a way to help you sustain and grow.
And
So
then
we're each at different classes.
cross-referencing all the time. So if
Yeah.
someone comes in to work with one of you and you realize that, oh, they're at a different stage, you make that referral and get them
Yes.
to the right place. Is that right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Great. So is there a place that they should start with all of these? We will be, of course, out on our website. We have a resource page. We'll be updating on our Shift, Sustain, Succeed, the information that Susan's providing. So you'll have contact information for all of these organizations, and we'll kind of show you how this breaks down as Susan's explaining it. So can they really start by contacting any one of those?
They can, really. Really is, all of us, you and I talked the other day about this alphabet soup of organizations out there. Government loves acronyms, and it seems like from the IRC to the SBDC to the, SVA to rapid response, whatever it is, acronyms are a way of life for us, and a lot of times for businesses that can be confusing. And I always tell a company, don't worry about who you reach out to, because workforce and economic development all know each other.
Right.
So typically we know who we can reach out to pass along a referral to. So yes, they can come in at any level with any contact person. I'm actually managing the program because the funding came through our agency. And so I'm doing all the metrics, the tracking, all the paperwork end of it, but also actively working on the actual process. So the process itself has 3 parts. The first is a business assessment. The second is a cash flow analysis, because obviously that's a big issue right now for many companies. And the third then is a tactical action plan. So the first and the second we typically will do with perhaps the president, a C-level person, cash flow analysis, maybe with the controller or CFO or whomever, bookkeeper, whoever runs their accounting. And then the tactical action plan really is developed with their core management team. So you bring your team together, sit down and say, okay, I have a perspective from your leader or leadership. Now I'd like to have sort of as a whole, the perspective of the whole team. Because oftentimes we'll find it's different. And what one division or person might think is a strength, another person's, is on the other side saying, well, did you think about this? And more heads together are better than one single alone. So that
is your role sometimes even as mediator to get to the real information there?
Sometimes, yeah.
I mean, I think you and I both know that a lot of times small businesses, particularly when things get tough, get really anxious about having that sit down. We avoid, it'll just get better on its own. But what a great resource to have people that really know and can lead you through that. I know when you and I talked the other day, I said, wow, that sounds like it takes some time. So that's the other thing, that businesses may be reluctant to contact you and get started because we are so busy doing what we're doing that how are we going to sit down and actually make a plan? And I believe you said that, in total, you're looking at probably about 6 hours-ish of investing in time with you and your partners to really take this, in-depth look and get on the right track. So if a business makes that plunge and does that, what are some of the outcomes that they can expect? What's the motivation to get them working with you?
So the tactical action plan, which is the third step, is really where we focus at. The outcomes for the business are really focused on what services are available, what resources are out there that can provide you with the biggest immediate impact to your business right now. Because even the forecasters of industries, one of the things that we spend a lot of time in is looking at where is business going. But even the forecasters of industry are saying, we can't even forecast where things are going to go. We know in 2021 it's going to be better. We know in 2022 it's going to be stable, we hope. But we don't know where things are going in the next 6 months. And that's really where I think that level of anxiety falls in, and really where this program is addressing, like, what am I going to do in the next 6 months? What can I do to proactively plan for the next wave? What can I do to figure out, how am I going to get sales? How am I going to recover? Again, what resources are out there? There's a lot of great programs in the state, in the region, locally, but not everyone's aware of them. And so really that's our job, to sit and listen to what the business is telling us about. Do they need training? Okay, well, you know what, maybe we should pull in the WEDNET partner because they have extra funding, you know, in the year coming up, and they will be able to help you. Or if it's, you know, I don't have an emergency disaster plan in place. Well, there's folks out there that's their area of expertise. They do that, you know. Perhaps you should consider doing this. If that is the most immediate impact, typically that's in one of the lower recommendations. What we're finding mostly is process improvement and marketing and sales. Those seem to be the two main issues that we can help companies with right now.
Is there a cost to any of your services?
Not for this program, not for the COVID recovery program. As I said earlier, the NIST MEP, our funders, actually provided the funding that developed this program and is paying for the program itself to be conducted. The recommendations that come out of the tactical action plan might have a charge to them, might not. It really depends. Are there grant programs out there? Absolutely. Are those going to be in the recommendations? Absolutely. Whatever the resources that you need, that's our job, is really to pair whatever your need is with whatever the resource or solution is. Sometimes there's a cost to that. Sometimes there's not. Sometimes there's actually a grant out there that can help your business as a result.
And a lot of programs are offering services and training and things like that free right now. So it really is a good time if you can kind of, you know, get your head out of everything that's going on. Mm-hmm. Certainly one of those benefits, as I understand, is leading our businesses to financial opportunities. There are, I swear, grants and loans coming at us from every direction right now. So I know that, you know, you would make recommendations. There's an issue of timing right now. So I'd like to talk, as I look at our minutes winding down, let's talk about timing and financial opportunities. So I think that's something that businesses have to navigate. And I'm wondering what you suggested as far as timelines that businesses need to be thinking about right now. Because they may need to make decisions about which grants and loans to apply for.
Right.
You know, depending on a timeline that we really don't even know when, you know, can you talk to that at all?
And, you know, that's a moving target too. Everything changes on a daily basis, I think. But for timelines, actually today, June 30th, is the last day that business is able to apply for the PPP. So if you have not talked to a lender and that's something you're interested in, you need to do it today. So that's, or go to the SBA.gov site and figure out how that you can apply for that. So yesterday, there was a new program that was announced. It's a $225 million statewide small business assistance program that starts effective today. And it's going to be let out in multiple rounds. So that first initial set is 10 days. So for the next 10 days, they're going to be accepting applications from small businesses that are less than $1 million in sales and less than 25 employees. And they have to operate in Pennsylvania, but the grants are awarded according to the amount of revenue that the business makes. So for example, if you make less than 50,000, then your award level would be 5. If you make more than 250,000, then your award might be 25,000. So the grants are from 5,000 to 50,000, 5,000 being the minimum, 50,000 being the max cap. But it's a great program. I think it's going to be, you know, like the SBA and like the PPP. I think there's going to be a lot of people applying. So I would encourage you, if you're interested, go to pabusinessgrants.com. That's the website, and I'm sure that Susan will have this posted. The PA 30-day fund is still out there. I know that was the session you had last week, still there and still available. It's a quick and easy process. So if you haven't applied for that, that is also an option for you. It's for businesses 3 to 30 people, and it's a $3,000 award. The County of Venango has just has received a notification of an award of about $4.5 million that is yet to be determined how it will be distributed. You know, some might be to municipalities. Certainly, I saw Emily Lewis was on the line. She sent me a note and said that right now there's discussions taking place about assistance that might be available to small business. So I'm sure that we will all hear about that.
So from a timeline standpoint, Susan, if there are small businesses, I know many have already applied and
Right.
so they've dug through their paperwork and they have things ready. But if I'm a small business that has really kind of sat back and said, that's too much work, but now is saying, well, you know, this is continuing and maybe I could use 3,000 or 5,000 or whatever is available to me. Are there things that you would recommend that they do today to get ready to put in those applications? Is there a short list of things that they should do?
Everyone's a little bit different, but I'd say probably at the minimum, have your financials available because nearly all of them require some type of financial review. That would be one, maybe general business operations. There's a lot of, there's sort of caveats to every one of the guidelines is a little bit different. Some of them have like size restrictions. Some of them have, you know, they're evaluated on different things. Certainly keep track of everything that you do. Make sure that you're tracking and your bookkeeping of that is in order. Those are really the main things I think when it comes to if I'm getting ready to apply, where do I start? Well, figure out which fund or contact one of us about which fund you can apply for and then get with your accountant, start there.
Yeah, I think that figuring out whether you have an accountant or you're working in QuickBooks, whatever, where you can get to your reports. Something I learned a long time ago through, you know, I love working with my state association for chambers, and they've helped me not only find resources for our members, but make sure that we as an organization are healthy and have what we need. And if we're applying for anything, and they told us how to prepare kind of our drawer with our articles of incorporation, you know, all of our key documents. If you haven't done that, that might be a great place to start, just to make your W-9. Everybody's asking for W-9s to issue checks. So if, you know, you could probably pretty easily pull up or contact Susan to find out what are those top 3 to 5 business documents that really by law, I should be able to put my hands on pretty quickly.
Here's something else too, if you haven't considered it, if you don't have an accountant, because of all the tax changes, you know, a lot of the funding that's come out isn't necessarily directly to business, but are in the form of tax credits. So tax credits for all the full-time employees you retain, tax credits for sick leave, tax credits for childcare leave. I mean, there's a lot, the tax, I'm glad I'm not an accountant. Let's put it that way. If anyone's online that's your profession, kudos to you because it must be crazy right now trying to keep up with all the changes. But just keep that in mind that even if you're not directly receiving a grant, that there's opportunities out there to help your business.
Yeah, and I know it sounds like a lot of work, but it really is important that we encourage our businesses. And I know while we don't have a big attendance today, as I look around at who's here, we are all working with a number of other businesses. And we, you know, we go home to people that are working for other businesses, or we'll find ourselves in the next few weeks talking to people that may either own or work for a small business. And it's important that we're armed with the information to pass on to everyone that there is help out there. There's really good help out there, but it does mean being attentive. So just to kind of end up our session, I have posted Susan's contact information. I would encourage everyone to get to know Susan and the resources she has to offer. So I asked this earlier, but let's ask it again. How does a business get started in receiving assistance? Like what is the best thing they can do?
Just call my phone number, my email is on there. Certainly take a look at the information after we're done. If you feel that this is something that applies to you or perhaps someone else that you know that might be interested, you know, or even the small business development centers, because I'm going to guess that most of you are non-manufacturing. you know, even the small business development centers, they're part of this program intentionally for a reason. And that's really what it's about, is about being intentional. Very much like your program. How are we going to shift? How are we going to adapt to what we're dealing with right now?
That's right. Well, I thank you, Susan. I know you've been kind of on call all the time for the last, you know, what, 12, however many weeks it's been. We're all trying to lose track. At least if I put that in my Shift, Sustain, Succeed, I know kind of where I'm at with it. But we're going to stay at it. I've got my bracelet on today that says keep going, and we're going to. We're going to keep going to help businesses. We've got a great lineup in the next couple of weeks. We talked about supply chain today. So David Carroll, who works at least nationally, maybe internationally in supply chain and assisting businesses, will join us next Tuesday. While that sounds very manufacturer-ish, next week he's really going to talk to us about how does supply chain impact small business, you know, where a small business gets products and services, and how you can be more efficient in that. And then he's going to actually help us with the NWIRC have a free webinar on the 23rd and 30th of July. So those will be 2.5 sessions each day. So more focused on manufacturing and small manufacturers. The week after next, we're going to have Michelle Crowley from Carlisle joining me on the call as we talk about events, how we're moving forward with events, or whether we should move forward with events, how we're compliant with those. And she'll share some experiences from down their way where they've had some big events that have had some disruption, to say the least. And then we're planning out into the future. So if you have a topic that you'd like us addressing with our Shift, Sustain, Succeed series, please let me know if you know a guest that we should have on. But again, we'll have this recording available in the next 24 to 48 hours, information about registration for the next 2 sessions. And thank you all. Enjoy this beautiful Pennsylvania day. So thank you.
Thank you so much.